Yeah.
Just wanted to get back to you. So, did you get a chance to do a little reading at all today on the site?
I actually read a little bit last night, and I was just trying to understand more about saunas and,
For sure.
what are the best saunas. I was interested in maybe the dome sauna.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, it's interesting you bring that up. Not too many people bring it up, and because I think they just assume by the way it looks that it's some sort of inferior. It's going to be inferior to getting a full, wood sauna.
Mm-hmm.
But actually, that's not the case at all. In a lot of our reviews, we've sat in probably 30 different saunas. We were actually shocked to find that using the dome saunas can actually be more intense. It's kind of more the way it's laid out, and I'll explain it to you why it could potentially be more intense. There's a thing called fluence, which has to do with the intensity. It's the emissivity of infrared coming off of an emitter, and it has a lot to do also with proximity of your body to the emitter, as well as the material being used and the energy going to it, the electricity. So in a dome sauna, in regular saunas, you have to actually heat the inside of the cabin, right? So there's a lot of space in there. So the infrared panel is doing two functions normally. It has to heat the interior temperature and is giving you your body infrared.
Right.
But there's a problem with that, because the problem is that normally to heat up the temperature, especially depending if you set it higher, like 110 degrees, 120 in there, that panel is going to have to get pretty hot, right? Because it has to heat the whole thing. So when a panel starts to get too hot, then you start to lose the ideal range, the micron range of infrared. It starts to be less and less therapeutic. So when you go inside of a dome, as you can imagine, there's not a lot of space in there by comparison. So the emitters don't really have to heat up a very large space. I mean, you can crank the thing on high, jump in there 2 minutes later, and you're good to go. It's already, the temperature's good. So what does that mean? That means that when you lie in there, you can actually keep the dial set really low. And that means that the emitters are quite cool, but you stay warm in there, so you can be comfortable, but the panels are staying cooler, which means the micron range is actually closer in that 9, 10 level, maybe even high 8s. It depends on what your setting is. So you have much more control over the temperature in there, and thus that allows you to actually control the micron range a little bit more. It's because you don't have to heat up such a huge space. So basically, it's just good to know that whenever a panel, ceramic or carbon, gets really hot, hotter than 98.6 degrees, your body temperature, anything that's getting like way hotter over that, then the micron range actually goes lower. It goes to more like 4 to 7 micron range.
Right.
And all the manufacturers know that, and you can get the manufacturer's specs, which we do, and we've looked at all of them. And on that subject, carbon emitters have been pretty much the same technology for the last 25 years or longer. If anybody ever claims they have some new carbon panel, it's just the same thing over and over. They say it's patented, whatever, carbon this. It's still the same thing. They still build it the same way. The only difference is, with like these Japanese carbons or whatever, is just because they don't have all the wires running through the actual carbon panel.
Right.
So, people like that because EMFs were lower, which it is. And we test all that, We've tested every single sauna with a Gauss meter. So, that is a benefit of getting like a Japanese one. There's less wiring in there for sure. But that being said, most companies, to stay competitive nowadays, have really worked pretty hard on making sure their emitters are low EMF. So it's not really so much something you have to worry about anymore unless you get some like really obscure brand that's really, really cheap. Because chances are then you're just getting some old technology sort of sauna. For them to sell it that cheap. But yeah, the dome is fantastic. That's actually the one that the owner of the site actually uses, and it's also portable. So you can keep it on a low setting, which is nice, but still get a good sweat. The goal actually, it's more ideal to do a longer session, but on a very low setting. So that way the infrared slowly raises your core temperature. Okay, and then that way your sweat is going to be more like sebaceous oil sweat. It's more toxin. But think about it, when you go in a traditional sauna, if you've ever been in there, it's like 190 degrees. You start to sweat pretty profusely because your body has to cool itself down very rapidly, otherwise you'll die. So most of that sweat is water and electrolytes, vitamin C and some B vitamins. So ultimately it's kind of depleting you over time, unless you're replenishing. Not the best thing in the world.
So it's just better to keep it on low.
Yeah, but, like in going in the dome, you can go in there, read a book, whatever, take a nap. You set it, it's like 70 degrees in there. Not a big deal. But you're getting dosed with a lot of infrared in an ideal micron range. So then you start to break a sweat, and that sweat is not so much water, but it's more so like that. It's coming out of the fat cells. So that's...
So ideal temperature is about, say, 60 to 100?
Yeah, exactly. It's you don't want it to feel like, oh man, this is hot, and then you're going to sweat because it's so hot. You want to sweat because the infrared is penetrating your tissues and warming your core body. Get it? It's like being heated a different kind of way. Right. It's like the sun, literally. When you go out in the sun, it's all infrared that's making you hot. If you've ever been in higher elevation, here's a perfect explanation for you for fluence. You ever been in a higher elevation out west or in the mountains, where it's like 10,000 feet higher than normal?
Right.
If you ever experienced that, you can feel the sun much more intensely. So even if the temperature outside is like 60 degrees, not exactly warm, or even 50 degrees, you feel fine because you're that much closer to the sun, and there's that fewer amount of clouds in the way, and you actually can stay pretty warm as long as you're in the sun. So that has to do with fluence. You're actually getting penetrated with more infrared rays. It's the same thing being in proximity to really good emitters, infrared emitters in a sauna. So the other important factor is, then choosing between carbon and ceramic, So that can be a little confusing. I'm sure you probably have some questions about that.
Right, I have, yes.
I always go back to manufacturer specs. There's nothing wrong with carbons. There's nothing wrong with ceramics. They both have their health benefits, but what the difference is that they both kind of generally hover around a certain micron range more so than the other one. Carbons generally hover a little bit more so in the 4 to 7 micron range. There's no fancy carbon technology out there that changes that or anything like that. It's always been that way. And you can ask to see the specs, and that's what it is. But let me just clear up the confusion right here. Plenty of sauna brand manufacturers will say, oh, well, we get the 9.4. Well, that's absolutely true. And they actually get up to even higher than 9s and 10s. It's actually a range. They'll actually tell you in small print anywhere from 4 to 20 microns. Right. But you know what it says? It says the most ideal therapeutic micron range is reached at the lowest temperature.
Okay.
So what does that mean? That means that when you turn that thing on, you flip the switch and you get in your sauna, electricity starts to flow to the emitters, and it starts to heat them up, of course.
Okay.
And you probably set the temperature, 100 degrees, 120, whatever it is. So they're chugging along there, trying to heat up the whole space. They're warming up. They've already way surpassed after 2 minutes. They've already gone way past room temperature or 98 degrees on that panel. Right. You know what I mean? So what does that mean? That means that the most ideal micron range was achieved within that first minute to 2 minutes. After that, it's not.
Right.
It starts to heat up. So that's the whole scam. That's the whole scam. Because how long are you doing your session for? 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes? Some people do 30 minutes. Some people, they get out, they leave the sun on, they come back, they go in there. Well, what that means is pretty much the whole time you're sitting in there, especially the second time you go back in, if you do short sessions, it's not in the ideal 9.4 range, or just 9-ish range, let's just say.
Right.
So that's what's so funny about it. So it really kind of opens your eyes to these companies that are claiming that, but just how I explained that to you, they would never want to educate you like that if you called up any company. Why?
Right.
Because then you'd be like, well, okay, all the therapeutic studies show it in this micron range for infrared, and you're telling me I'm not going to get that. Okay. Well, see you later. But they don't want to tell you that. They'd rather tell you that you do hit that range, the ideal range, with their panels. They just won't tell you for what period of time.
Right.
So now that I've basically kind of blown the whistle and, explained to you the scam, now you got to figure out, all right, so again, between carbon, ceramic, and between these companies, which one is making a sauna that will give me the ideal infrared most of the time that I'm in there? Instead of it being on for 10 minutes, getting that ideal range, hey, maybe 50 would be better. Hey, maybe 70, maybe 80. Could we even do 90? That would be awesome.
What is this, the technology, this crystal silicone?
Where did you see that? I was curious. You said that yesterday.
It was they're selling these hot house domes.
Yes, that's what I thought. I found that on Google. We actually may start offering that. It's funny that you stumbled across it. We're actually talking to somebody today about it. So it's a newer technology using silicone to refract infrared. And if you position it on a 160-degree arc, it actually starts to refract and reflect back your own body's micron range, okay, your own ideal, but also the emitters. So what they've actually created there is similar to a dome from the standpoint that they can keep the panels really cool because you're very, very close to them, and it's also reflecting back. That's the newer technology, reflecting back a lot of them. So what they'll actually show you on there with manufacturer's specs is that the panels stay somewhere around, like, I don't know, I forget what it was, like around 100, 110, actually a little less than that. But basically they don't really get very warm, which is good, right? That's good because of what I explained to you. That means that actually, see, they're giving you a piece of information there that most companies wouldn't want to give you.
Right.
They're linking two concepts in your mind: ideal micron range and temperature of the panel. Go ahead and look at all these other websites out there. Go read them, and you'll never see the two things linked together.
Okay. Which domes do you what dome do you sell, and which dome do you recommend?
Yeah, the only dome that we can do Smarty Dome. It's just really overpriced, I think. It's a good dome, but it's like $4,000. One of my favorite domes, as I said, that the owner owns, is the Clear Light Curve Dome.
Okay.
It's just a very competitive price for what they're doing, and their emitters. One of the reasons I like them, it's not just because, again, it's laid out, and I explained to you why that's beneficial, but their emitters, they back them back to back. So you're actually getting like twice the amount of emitters in there. Right. They back them back to back. They're the only ones who do that because it cancels out the EMF. Not all of it, but probably 95% of it. That would be a fair estimate. Okay. So
is that carbon fiber? Is that carbon fiber?
And it's a mix.
Wire?
And it's a mix. So what they figured out was, based on what I told you, is different materials give off different emissivity, different spectrum. Because why? Because it has to do with their temperature. So the carbon fibers don't get there to a certain temperature, and the ceramic panel portion gets to a certain temperature. Get what I'm saying? So
right.
basically by doing that, mixing it in there, it's an ingenious, really affordable way to get a little bit more full spectrum. Remember I said that, it's not, sure, in the 9 micron range, that's where most of the studies were done, and that is ideal. But they have also found that, there is lower micron range, and that has its own health benefits as well. It's not like there's none. So they figured, why don't we get the best of both worlds, and we'll mix a little carbon together, and we'll mix a little ceramic. And, and if you've ever, we've sat in all the different, saunas, and you can actually feel the difference in fluence between saunas. Right. And we definitely like theirs one of the best because I was going to mention one other thing. When you flip these saunas on and off, one thing you don't also hear about too often is radiant efficiency. Okay. So, like, if you have, 20 watts going to an emitter, let's say, or 10 or 5, whatever it is, carbons generally are manufactured with a conversion. They convert the electricity to infrared. Their conversion percentage efficiency is like 40%. So most of that is wasted electricity. Okay, ceramics are somewhere around 90. All right. So what that means is if you have the capacity to convert more of the electricity into the panel and produce more infrared from that power, that means that you could dial it down more. You have more of a range to dial down. Does it make sense?
So does ceramic go into the body? Does that infrared go into the body as deep as the carbon?
Yeah, well, the way you got to look at it is it has more to do with the micron range.
Right.
So, so the higher, again, once they found it's kind of in the 9-ish, 10-ish range. Anything further away from 1, but more closely within like 8, 9, 10, but more around 9, that penetrates deepest into the body, somewhere around 2 inches. So most infrared penetrates very close to that anyways, regardless of the micron range,
okay.
But it's probably at its deepest or longest around like the 9-ish range.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's an important thing to know. So that's why one reason I like ceramics, because you can kind of dial it down more and get more of have the capacity to basically set the temperature lower, but get the same amount but get more of an increased amount of fluence.
Right.
So there's a lot of factors, you see what I'm saying, to kind of keep in mind here. So if you want me to just break it down real quick, I mean, my personal preferences for like ceramic. Actually, before I even say that, the other thing that you want to look for is to have like a pretty clean sauna as well. So EMF's not the best thing in the world, but the other thing that's not the best thing in the world is off-gassing. A lot of these saunas, they build with a lot of adhesives, strong adhesives and glues.
Right.
Part of the reason that they're doing that is because probably about 90-something% of the saunas made are made from the same manufacturers overseas, and they usually have like pine board in between with some veneers on the outside. And you actually have to look. You can actually spot that pretty easily if there's a close-up picture of like the side door that's open of somebody's sauna. If you see like a flat piece that kind of goes on the side of it, it's hiding the pine in between. Or if you have like a top-down view of a sauna, that's another thing you can ask for from a company. And say you want a really close top-down view, you can actually see sometimes a discoloration, like the whitish board in between with the veneers sandwiched on the outside from the top with the roof off. That's a way to spot that. But regardless of that, probably 90-something% are like that. So what does that mean is you have all that infrared and that heat expanding and contracting, breaking down those chemical bonds over time, and basically polluting your indoor environment if you have it inside. And it kind of defeats the purpose, So, yeah, you'll still be getting the benefits of infrared, but then, you also have potentially some toxic stuff getting airborne, which I think is a little silly. Again, 90% of companies, they glue their emitters to the wall.
Right.
And then some companies, they use mostly screws, just screws and plain old wood, and they use, and whatever wood they say it is, that's 100% in there. So even if a company claims we have this type of wood, we have this type of wood, did they claim that it was 100% that type of wood? Because if they didn't specifically claim that, you better believe that's not true.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So you have to. That's an important thing to look for. Some people have allergies to pine and things like that. Most people are not that allergic, but it's more about the adhesives and stuff. And if they say they're not using they're using non-toxic adhesives and all this gentle stuff, I mean, that's almost impossible if you know anything about carpentry from the standpoint. If you have these big pieces of wood heating up and contracting for years and years.
Right.
I mean, you're going to need something pretty industrial to withstand that over a period of time. You know what I mean? It's unfortunately, like in that industry, to really hold things together like that, you need again something pretty strong that bonds really well, and generally that has a lot more chemicals in it. But anyways, this is kind of a little bit of a tangent. So I've actually done the test. Where you can actually tell the difference with different types of sweat.
Okay.
Because that's what you're looking for here. So there's actually ways you can test. You can actually wipe yourself down with this specific kind of paper towel. Then when you hold it up to the light, you can see more oil residue.
Right.
So it's a very unsophisticated, cheap test that actually works extremely well. Because otherwise, it's pretty hard to tell, what kind of sweat am I sweating. Right. And so you just sit in different saunas and actually tell. So some of the most oily sweat I've gotten, which carries most of the toxins, were in actually ceramics or ceramic mixes.
Okay.
where I'm keeping it at a very low temperature and sitting in there for a little while. My preference is to, honestly, for a very, very clean sauna. What kind of budget range do you have? Because that actually might help me point you in kind of a more of a direction.
I don't know. I was looking at. I just kept looking and reading over the last month or so, and just been unable to make up my mind as to what sauna to get, because I'm hearing carbon wire, I'm hearing carbon panels, and a lot of things, and then I'm hearing ceramics are better and it's not better, so I just didn't know, and I saw some of the saunas that were cheaper. They were mentioning some of the same things as some of the saunas that were upscale. So
everything is written to sound like it's all equal or better than somebody else. So it's hard to discern from the marketing.
2,000 and below is probably what I wanted to do.
Okay, all right, that's workable. Generally, and then they also play all these pricing games too. So. As I said, 90-something% of the saunas are coming out of the same four manufacturers. They pretty much manufacture them identically. And then companies will market them, different with their own unique language. And some will price, a one-person sauna, for $4,000. And some companies will price pretty much the same sauna, as far as construction goes, for $1,600.
Right.
So you also can't tell by the price. So don't be fooled by that.
Yeah, I know. I got on the website. Alibaba. You familiar with that website?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Yeah, and began to look at certain saunas, and, it looked like the same technology they were selling in the U.S. for, $4,000, $2,000, $4,000, the same type saunas.
I would agree.
So,
the only thing you got to watch out for is just over in this country, we have a big thing about EMFs,
Right.
And probably Canada too. So some of these companies will basically bolster, and dampen the EMF a little bit more. So that's the only thing. Yeah, you could get something pretty cheap out there and be almost the same, but one thing is probably the EMF would be a lot higher.
Mm-hmm.
That's one thing that they do kind of change, I guess you could say. These companies, so I can appreciate that part. And then the other thing generally that's true is that you kind of got to understand the industry, but the most lucrative product, what's the cheapest to manufacture, because it's produced in mass amounts from these huge manufacturers overseas, is carbon saunas. So. That being said, it's generally true that most companies who got into the sauna industry to make a good amount of money, they know that the best profit margins are carbon saunas.
Right.
Right? And generally speaking, companies that are probably gotten to the market because they really want to help people and they're more concerned about doing like a really good product, helping people, they do ceramics.
Okay.
Ceramics, the margins are not as good. They're also not as popular. Right. And people don't understand the differences. It's just a lot easier to sell massive amounts of carbons.
Right.
So that's why when you look out there and you scour the internet and you just do research, that's part of the reason you just see so few companies doing ceramic panels.
Right.
Because it's not so much where the money is, but when you talk to these ceramic companies, you get to know them a little bit more, and you do some background research. They're usually in it because they genuinely want to help people. You know what I mean? They build a really good product. Right. So Clearlight's interesting. It's kind of like it kind of spans. It's almost like it truly is a hybrid, including with their margins. They're kind of like they're like in between, I guess you could say. They're in between.
Now does the Clearlight, does that come with the infrared mat? It
does. We actually if you saw on our website, we updated it with a few other infrared mats. Mm-hmm. Because people were asking about it. you can still get a lot of amazing infrared benefits just lying on a good mat. Anywhere you are, it's portable, etc. You can put in your bed, and it runs at a really low, low rate. But the mat that they put in the clear light, it helps reflect a little bit of your own natural infrared, but it's generally pretty cheap. It's like $50.
Okay.
It's not going to do a whole lot, but it just kind of helps to enhance if you're laying in that dome, let's just say. But if you want like a real therapeutic infrared mat, I would probably look at the 3 that we posted up there. Those are pretty much the best and kind of the only ones out there that you actually plug in. But yeah, no, it's great because there's some domes out there, curves, that they don't even give you anything. They just give you a plain pad. But it definitely does help. And also, it's good if you do get the dome to flip over, do some sessions when you're lying on your stomach. Because, of course, you want, your back, you got your spine, you got, all that stuff kind of going on, your kidneys. It's good to give yourself that therapeutic infrared back there, too.
They're selling some type of mats now made out of geranium or tourmaline.
Yeah, tourmaline.
Tourmaline, yeah.
Yeah, tourmaline, or the alternative is jade. Yeah, we mentioned that on the site. They both pretty much put out comparable micron range of infrared.
Right.
They're both claiming, both companies, the few different companies that basically have either do jade or amethyst or doing tourmaline. That's natural emissivity of radiation that comes out of all sorts of different elements. And those elements seem to be the best when you heat them up. Okay. But as far as have there been like a lot of conclusive studies, rigorously testing that? To be honest, no, there hasn't. There's been a few, but the consensus seems to be that they're pretty close to being the same thing. And the newer thing out on the market, let's just put it this way, is amethyst. What's been used in ancient past, really, for a pretty long time therapeutically, is jade.
The biomat.
Yeah, either biomat or Therasage, and then there's Vitamat. But people are honestly getting great therapeutic benefits on both. So it's the way that I do it. I mean, I don't think you can really lose out on selecting either one if anybody gets one. Again, they've both been out for long enough that people are getting great healing benefits on both. It's really hard to discern the difference.
Which is a better mat, the amethyst or the geranium jade?
I think we got to go more by company, more so than, because it's hard to tell between the elements which are going to be really better. But I would say that Biomat's like twice the price of what else is out there. And I know the other company probably wouldn't want to hear me saying this, but my gut feeling, just reading, just hearing people's testimonials and talking to a lot of customers, personally myself, who've owned and used them. I just think that the Biomat might be a little bit more durable. Just might last a little longer. I think possibly you get what you pay for in that area, as far as durability goes.
Right.
Really how long it lasts and warranty. It's just one of those things where, or maybe the other mat will last just as long too, and you paid half the price or less than half the price. It's just kind of one of those things.
Right.
But therapeutically, I don't think you can lose either way going with those. But and so yeah, if you wanted to increase the intensity of laying in a dome or something else, or the other thing, I mean, you could certainly lay on one of these mats too. That'd be pretty intense, and then you be getting infrared from both sides simultaneously, or you can just flip over halfway through.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I was wanting to know, what are so you recommend the clear light dome?
Yeah, that's probably one of the best ways to experience infrared. Yeah, the emitters are very, very close to you. It's very, very intense. You can also grow with the sauna too. That's why I tell people, you can work with it on low settings for a while, and then once your body can handle more, you can always crank that up, years down the road. You know what I'm saying? Like as your body adapts. With a lot of saunas, you don't have quite that same adaptability. Like sitting in a full-blown carbon sauna. You may get a lot of benefit. You may get some benefit early on, but then, once your body adapts, it's detoxed a lot, and et cetera, years down the road, it's still going to only reach kind of like the same amount of range. You can't really crank it up a whole lot to be a lot more intense. But there is a much more of a range with like the dome. So I think that's kind of neat. You can continue to get a lot of benefits way down the road. And then the same goes for Therasana, if you want to go that direction. I know I didn't mention them. I didn't really mention any specific brands.
Oh, Therasana?
Yeah, Therasana.
Okay.
That's the only company where you can actually dial in the power, the electricity that's going to the emitters, like control the actual electrical flow, not the temperature, but which, I mean, of course it does naturally control the temperature too in a way, but I'm talking about specifically controlling the electricity flow to the panels.
What are some cheaper brands that are pretty decent?
Yeah, I mean, once you get to like the 1800 range, I mean, we discount, some of the brands pretty deeply. But even still, once you get to like that range and below, you got to really watch out. And then you're going to start to pretty much have to get basically something where the construction, is maybe not completely the wood they're talking about, and it's got some other stuff in it, some other chemicals. I mean, that's just you can't get out. You can't get out of that once you get to a certain price range. But that being said, like we do, we are very competitive with Clearlight. So if you're looking for something that's probably up more higher level in terms of quality, but that we can, reduce more, we're just probably very competitive with them. We can do a lot more with the price point. So that's an exception, I'm saying, to the rule. Okay. But other than that, to be honest, I've never found a carbon that was really clean.
Okay.
Yeah, I just haven't ever, unfortunately. That'd be a great niche for some company to do and be really competitive, but it hasn't been done. I have certainly found ceramics that also build a very clean sauna, like Heavenly Heat. Heavenly Heat builds probably the cleanest sauna on the market. It's just poplar wood, 100%. It's really thick, poplar wood. It's very heavy sauna. And then they use screws to attach everything together, and that's it. Screws and wood.
Wow.
That's it. So, and that's how you think that's how it should be, but that's not usually the case. So, so I love them. Very clean sauna, great ceramics in there. But, again, that's getting you up to a price point. Again, it depends on what your budget is, we're in around $3,600, $3,700. So, again, you can kind of get the connection now between higher labor costs because it's higher quality. A lot of times it's built in this country. You have higher labor costs. But you're going to pay for it. But then you also got to look at, can you get a loan out? Is that worth it? Or, do I want to invest in something I want to keep and get benefit from for 20, 30, 40 years? It's a it could be a lifetime investment. But other than that, keeping your price range, probably would recommend Clearlight. Stay in your price range, but get something a little bit higher quality. Just because we can reduce it. Otherwise, I can't really keep you in that price range. I mean, I'd have to tack on at least $1,000. Okay. Just to even recommend some other brands out there. Yeah, but again, just to clarify, price point. Yeah, as you know, it doesn't always discern quality. Like there's another very popular, well-known sauna out there that probably everybody knows because they market so well, and they overprice all their saunas by at least $2,000 or more.
Well, Alex, I've got to run. I have an appointment shortly here, but I will look on the website, and my wife and I will take a look at Clearlight. Okay,
that sounds good. Yeah, and also check out their homepage as well, so you can kind of take a look at all the models, look inside. Yeah, we'll work with you the best we can on the price.
Okay. Now it's Clearlight. I'm trying to remember all these saunas. Is this the one with the panels?
They're hybrid. They're hybrid. They're a mix of carbon and ceramic.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, thank you.